Hello YouTube. I want to talk today about one of the most amazing cases of UFO visitations in the former Soviet Union. It should be known all over the world, but it's not. But it has a special meaning to me because somehow my investigation of the Lake Baikal humanoids comes into play. Here's what happened. This took place on May 16, 1990. Amazing news quickly disseminated around the border villages in the south of western Trans-Baikal region in Siberia. And then they were published. Information about the case was published in the Kakhta regional newspaper, Leninskaya Znamya, and the Republican newspaper, meaning of the Republic of Buryatia. The name was Pravda Buryatia, and made noise outside of the region. And this is what happened. Amid a clear sunny day, the sky above Kudara-Somon village somehow strangely turned yellow. Soon, many people saw how a large fireball with a diameter of up to 40 meters began to approach from the direction of Mongolia. Making zigzags in the sky, it descended and landed on the top of the hill. 3 humanoid creatures emerged from the object and headed down the mountain slope to the residential structures or buildings. The 4th crew member remained with the craft. The height of aliens, or how tall they were, was visually determined to be about 3 to 4 meters. When a crowd of local residents, led by a police outfit on a motorcycle, rushed up the mountain, the creatures stopped, turned back, got into the object, that illuminating the surrounding areas with a fiery flash, ascended and instantly disappeared in the sky, as if it dissolved. One Moscow TV reporter was on site a few months later. He was a skeptic who did not believe in aliens or anything related. In Kudara-Somon, the talk was only about the mysterious visit of aliens from outer space. Someone watched the radiant or luminous ball from a distance, and someone was closer. The employees of the Kudarinsky Consumer Agency or Food Distribution Agency were especially lucky because the spacecraft landed near the base of that agency. Burnt grass, traces of 4-foot stands, and an arched pothole on the stony soil. That's what he found. It surprised the journalist the most. And because only heavy equipment could get to the site, but the equipment could not get up here because of the rocky ledges and the steepness of the slope. So how did it get there? Over time, the excitement in the area began to fade. He left, and about a quarter century passed. Now, in 2011, this journalist was a well-known personality with Moscow TV. And this is the story where it becomes very interesting to me. Some of you know of my investigation of the Lake Baikal humanoids. It became an international story. It was featured in a number of TV specials and so forth. You can see my video about this strange and fascinating case, or read Russia's USO Secrets for complete details. Now, this book I co-authored with Philip Mantle, and I continuously look for confirmation of the humanoid sightings in that area and elsewhere. But that's a hell of a story, and it's not only Lake Baikal that is involved. But I want to go back to the case of 1990. Here's what I found out as related to this strange case of alien visitation. So, in the spring of 2011, there were ever-increasing news reports about the appearance of UFOs over Lake Baikal. and they descended into depths of the lake down to the bottom, and there were rumors about gigantic humanoids in radiant overalls. Now, I do not know if the humanoids were again active in the lake as they were in 1982, or this was the repeated narrative of the information that I published in Russian and then of course in English years before. I also know that Russia's President Vladimir Putin also descended to the bottom of Lake Baikal in 2009, but I'm sure he has his own information about the events surrounding those humanoids, if that's why he went to the bottom of the lake. Although my book is now available in Russian, and Russians do find out about previously concealed pages of their nation's paranormal history, and they should pay more attention to the Baikal area because it's a fascinating territory, and I'll talk more about it in other videos, but today I want to concentrate on very interesting UFO cases. So the story of a UFO landing in Kudara-Somon. Now, this story led experts in Moscow to the decision to immediately go to the place of this long-standing event. Indeed, almost a quarter century has passed since that moment, and there were confirmation, because when the local police outfit drove to the UFO landing site, the incident report was made and it was recorded in the official documents. So when the Moscow people arrived to the site, it was unbelievable to them because they expected grins or denial of the long-standing fact. But the local law enforcers immediately called a dozen villagers who were direct eyewitnesses, and one of the employees even participated in that meeting with space aliens. There really is a report on the incident, but it was long ago been handed over to the archives of the Kakhta District Department of the Interior, so the law enforcement has it. Now, but the local policeman also became the consultant to the Moscow television group of ufologists, and he got together many eyewitnesses. All that day, the Trans-Baikal village on the border with Mongolia lived just with one desire: to tell the guests details of the distant incident of May 16, 1990. Why haven't you come for so long? We have been waiting for you more than 20 years. That's what the local people said. Visitors from Moscow managed to collect a lot of real eyewitnesses of the event, record their stories, and even with some of them they climbed the mountain to the landing site of that alien spacecraft. This group of ufologists gathered rich material that is still awaiting scientific reflection. Of course, eyewitnesses were already of the retirement age, and the same information was repeated by their children, information about this so-called landing. But the children at the time, they were small kids. However, they kept repeating the story. Now, the fragment of the stories that they revealed were included in the television movie in Russia called Mysterious Russia, Irkutsk Ulan-Ude, Guest from the Future. It was broadcast on Russian NTV channel in December of 2011, and then it was rebroadcast a few times later. So what did really happen in that Trans-Baikal border village? One witness, Marina Yevgenievna Zemiryeva, reported the following. It was at lunchtime. Natasha Sokolovikova and I are going home for lunch from the base of the Kudarinsky food distribution center. She says, "It is not clear that this is with my skirt. It seems that the color of the skirt has changed. It turned brown and it was black. Is this the dust or what?" Then they returned from lunch, working, and then 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes later, one of the girls called out, "Go, go, the UFO has arrived." Zoya Badmaeva was the first one to see. She was on the porch and she called us. We went out and really, see on the mountain there's an object, so round, silvery, and there's a reflection, maybe a kilometer from us. There were a lot of people at the base. They took binoculars. That day, Zoya Badmaeva came to the local food distribution office from lunch earlier than everybody else and sat down to work. Soon, she felt the back of her head as if someone had a magical call out to her, "Look!" So she says, I went out to the porch and I gasped. There was an unusual yellow-orange light in the street. And on the mountain there was a silver-colored object. I immediately ran to call women. One lady by the name of Natalia Andreevna Sokovikova added, "For some reason my skirt turned yellow. When they called me, I was in the warehouse, and they said to me jokingly, 'You're tall, they must have come after you.'" They laughed, and then they became scared of aliens. Another eyewitness of the event, Margarita Garmatseronovna Tsibikova, from the same district, shared her memories like this. Everyone saw, those who were in the food distribution store, 50 to 60 people, and many of them are no longer alive, of those who had seen what happened. This ball was iridescent, raspberry silver color, and there was this wind, very unusual, yellow, and the sand was yellow. The mountain is bald, everything is visible. Some people came out of there, one large in the dark, others smaller in orange silvery. The ball spun, overflowed. All nature turned yellow while they were here. Before this incident, Vladimir Don Popov did not believe in extraterrestrial aliens, and he says, here it is. I saw a UFO with my own eyes, and next to it a man about 4 meters tall. And then Marina Zimiryova added, then the object turned around, and the side windows, they became visible. The diameter of the object was larger than the house. I saw with binoculars 3 beings in orange spacesuits. They walked one by one along the side of the mountain. Then someone saw the 4th coming from the other side. They walked on a grand scale, not looking at faces. They looked far away. Then they went there from the police station. People came and they also looked through binoculars. Ivan Agafonov rode a motorcycle with a police officer. Maybe they got scared, those aliens, immediately. At once, they disappeared. So they could not say that they flew away. They instantly disappear, as if they were not here. The house of Olga Fedotova in Kudara-Somon was at the foot of the mountain on which the flying object had landed. On that day, she came home for dinner and immediately noticed that the snow-white curtain on the window had turned gray. The face of her daughter Tanya was of the same color, which made her mother think that she was sick. But the daughter pointed to the mountain, where the landing apparatus was already standing. Apparently some kind of radiation was coming from the object or light that reflected from it. Many noticed that the reflection was some kind of yellowish. The color of things changed. Then this apparatus flew away and everything disappeared. And when the evening came, the window curtain became white again. Now, I want to tell you about a very curious fact which related to the colors, the glow, and maybe this object that visited faraway distant Russian village. In those years, Olga Fedotova continued, we had Chinese wall calendars with color photographs of girls. After this incident, all the girls in the photos began to turn gray. After the disappearance of the UFO, The gray color has not changed to the previous colors. So our guys gathered and burned these calendars. Here is the testimony of Olga Viktorovna Bukholtseva. On the May Day street, this is the street next to the mountain, everything turned yellow for a while. UFO, seemed oval, steel color. Several figures in shiny pinkish long robes. Two that were the closest, they were taller, a cut above the others. I also thought that these were men, and the shorter ones were women or females. It seemed to me that they are taller than people, but they looked like people. When our people began to drive up to the area, they disappeared. Then the light immediately became normal. Now, the Moscow group also found one of those who rushed up with the policeman to the aliens, riding on a motorcycle ahead of the crowd of villagers. It was Ivan Agafonov, who later lived in Ulan-Ude. This is a city there in that area. And this witness said, I worked then in the district. Police officer Zimirov says, let's go, because I had a motorcycle on the go. Zimirov hurried, but while they were going around the foot of the hill to get closer to the object soared up and instantly disappeared into the sky. When they climbed to the landing site, they saw only crushed grass from the 4 steps of the apparatus. They were about a meter in size and the distance from each other by several meters, forming a diameter of the lower part of this UFO of 30 to 40 meters. Now, an employee of the Kakhta Museum of Local Lore, by the last name of Gendunov, told the following to the visitors from Moscow. No one saw the creatures that they entered or exited along a ladder. They just came along. And the 4th one appeared as if from a slope. Now, all these events, they took place between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. Residents watched the object for about 40 to 50 minutes. Museum staff traveled to the area where the UFO appeared and, just in case, took soil samples, which then were sent to the Burat Scientific Center for analysis. I heard that scientists did not reveal anything unusual. So what is it that so much interested aliens in the south of Buryatia, and in particular in Kudara-Somon, where the aliens from outer space decided to go on foot to? The nature of yellow fog remains incomprehensible. It appeared before the UFO landing and stayed on until its disappearance. This fog had the force of impact on terrestrial objects, penetrating even into dwellings, as if scanning the space of the landing site, maybe before they arrived. And yet the mysterious incident in Kudar-Somon is unique in that hundreds of people of different ages saw the landing of aliens at the same time, and they should be taken seriously. Such a collective hallucination is not possible to be in nature, to exist. And the silence of official science indicates that it is not able as yet to give a reasoned explanation to the event. And I'm assuming that official science is actually studying this. But you know what happens when you assume. So this is a very interesting area. But I want to tell you a few more cases, alleged landing cases, and very interesting UFO encounters, so to say, in the history of Buryatia. This Republic of Buryatia is a federal subject of Russia, and it's located in Siberian, in Asia. A very interesting place to go if you travel in Russia, in those parts. But let's look in the past. And the first thing that comes to mind is a summary in the archives from the annals for 1904. On July 1st at 10 o'clock in the Andronovka of the Trans-Baikal region, a balloon with rotating searchlights was visible. The fact that this is not a comet indicates the presence of portholes in a rigid metal case. So this object had portholes. The flight path is interesting. It was strictly along the Trans-Siberian Railway under construction at the time, as if someone had studied the reason for the accumulation of people and equipment along the railway. And since the first trains were already traveling along the Trans-Baikal Railway, it seemed as if a luminous object was following one of the trains, trying to see if it can do the same low speed at that time. But the most interesting thing is that the first balloons appeared in Irkutsk a decade later, and aircraft began to fly only with the outbreak of civil war in 1918. This is very interesting. It could be Japanese spies, but even Japan did not possess such advanced flying apparatuses at the time, and this was the Russia-Japanese War period. Here are some more cases from my files. Cases of appearance of UFOs in Trans-Baikal area, citing the stories of residents of the region, and evidence. This episode took place on June 3rd, 1982, in the Air Defense Regiment deployed near Chita town, a city in the area. It began with the fact that an urgent report was received from the regiment that a plane patrolling the border with China found an unusual object of a spherical shape at an altitude of about 17 kilometers and was ready to attack it. And at that time, the object suddenly disappeared. The report specifically stipulated that the detected spherical object could not have been a meteorological balloon, since meteorological balloons are well known to Soviet Army personnel. They are smaller than the observed object and never rise to such altitudes. Since there were no residential objects on the ground in the area where the plane met the so-called balloon, there were no other border posts and a weather station, it was decided to start the investigation from the weather station. A telephone conversation with the head of the weather station in the area revealed the following. Firstly, the launch time of the balloon probe from this weather station did not coincide with the time that the air defense aircraft met with this unknown object. Secondly, the weather balloons never ascended to the altitude of 16 kilometers. So this case was recorded in the archives of the USSR Air Force under the heading Secret. There are still no explanations for the phenomenon. And then something else very interesting took place in 1975 in the Argun region. And it was a shepherd by the name of Nikolai Simakov who witnessed a strange incident in the sky. He said that he was preparing a flock of sheep for the night when he suddenly saw a bright object flying in the sky. It flew between the shepherd rest area and Argun directly at Nikolai. When this object approached, he saw something roundish, casting light on the ground, and then in front of him. And suddenly he saw a surface-to-air missile chasing this thing, he said, to intercept it. It was not difficult to identify the missile. He had seen enough during missile testing launches in the area. And then he forgot all about his rams. He was waiting for the frigging impact. But that's not what happened. Even on approaching the flying saucer, about 200 meters from it, the missile blazed all of a sudden, engulfed in fire, and fell on the ground. In the archives of the USSR Ministry of Defense, this case is listed as an attempt to cross the state border by an aircraft of unknown origin. However, all the details of this operation were seized and most likely destroyed, or who knows, stashed away in some central place where they keep such records. In another air defense unit deployed in the southeast of the Chita region in 1988, there was such an interesting UFO case. During combat duty, a signal appeared on the radar screen in the place it appeared where nothing should have been flying. A certain object was located and where no one was supposed to fly at all. The target was going at an oddly slow speed, a little over 300 kilometers per hour, because military aircraft fly much faster, and along a strange, not very linear trajectory. The target gradually turned towards the Chinese border, according to one direct participant in all these events. 200 kilometers to the border, 100 kilometers, soon to be 50 kilometers. Now, the topographer jumped to his tablet and began to draw on it the flight path of the target. Additionally, it included the altimeter. The radar screen was photographed. The reports were sent upwards to the battalion level and from there on to Chita. And from this team, there was only one serious inquiry from the Trans-Baikal military district. So several squadrons were alerted and interceptors were already in the area. I'm continuing the report. Meanwhile, the strange target flew up to the border itself and began to move along the line of the border. The most interesting thing is that it was not seen or observed by interceptors or border guards on the ground. It was tracked only by one station. And unknown, this object, it mocked all the anti-aircraft gunners for some time, then turned on the afterburner, and then it hid in China. That's what the records say. And in the morning, all the equipment was turned off, closed, and sealed. The film was seized, and the entire night shift that was on duty that night, it was sent under guard to the district headquarters in Chita. So who knows what happened after that? Although the year was 1988 and people were not executed any longer, so somebody has more details. But here are some more cases. The famous Russian Trans-Baikal writer Nikolai Yurkanenko. He was a former civil aviation pilot. He recalled that in the late 1950s, his colleagues witnessed a very strange phenomenon. The Il-14 airplane along the flight of Yakutsk-Nerchinsk-Irkutsk, on the way to Nerchinsk, it almost collided with a certain object that literally pursued the aircraft. According to the pilots, it was the size of a two-story building and emitted bright light. The landing in Nerchinsk was cancelled officially because of weather conditions. So the aircraft landed in Chita. And then the pilots learned that something similar happened with another airplane near Ulan-Ude. But there, everything ended tragically. The airplane crashed. There is also evidence that in 1980, one of the two 154 aircraft of the Chita airline almost collided with some kind of luminous ball that arrived from unknown direction but along the course that the airliner came from. In all cases, the non-disclosure of all details of the incidents was taken from the civilian pilots. That's not only there, it happened through the Soviet Union, through the history of UFO sightings. And on October 28, 1989, an unknown object repeatedly approached Soviet and Korean aircraft over the Irkutsk airport. I remember those cases, and it's been so many years, but I have recollection. It did make noise at the time. Now, also something interesting. A military topographer who worked on the marking of a military airfield on the village of Bezrechная, he said that during a walk, and this happened in the mid-1960s of the 20th century, he observed a luminous sphere hovering about 50 meters to the size of a large inflatable children's ball. So this was the size. of the sphere from what he made it. At first, the topographer decided it was a weather balloon, but then he realized that the ball was repeating the movements of the observer. The topographer moved forward, and the ball moved in the same direction. When the military guy moved back, the sphere just as obediently flew after him. When this man crouched, the ball began to fall. He said that he waved his hand over his head, he recalled later, and he froze because the thing swayed from side to side. Then this Soviet military helicopter appeared in the sky, and the balloon instantly soared upwards and disappeared. So, to summarize, the case in Kudara-Somon is one of the most interesting and definitely mysterious cases, because how could it be a mass hallucination? So many people observing the same evidence, so to say, the same landing and appearance and disappearance of aliens, let's call them that. Somehow the reports of humanoids have come back about 8 years later, from 8 years 8 years ago. If we look from 2019 to 2011, the reports of same humanoids came back. And remember, the humanoids that I reported on, that were sighted in 1982, were of about 3 to 4 meters tall. We have reports of other cases in the area, and I have more to talk about Lake Baikal and UFOs. But I also had the story of this very sinister fog that overcame a Soviet unit in that area as well. So all this needs careful research, but really, who's going to do it? I'm a civilian researcher. I can do so much, even with my contacts in Russia. But of course we continue. And there are more stories that I want to tell you, including a very interesting case of UFOs also mimicking Soviet troops down on the ground. And we'll talk about it later. So if you like my research, I again ask you, please support me. There are links to where you can send the money to help. And there are other areas I want to concentrate on as well, but I don't want to leave Mongolia alone, so to say, because there is a lot to talk about. So one day we'll come back to it, hopefully soon. And of course the areas in Russian Asia. Again, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for your comments and suggestions. I listen to you, and my goal is to bring you information that no one really does bring to you. All the new cases and developments on our planet. Thank you.